Welcome everyone to Finding Your Flock. This latest episode, episode 4. Very, very excited to have a fellow founder joining us today, Valerie. We were lucky enough to meet at a conference, an investor conference here in London. Super excited to us that we can connect. So, Valerie, I'm going to do a brief intro, like a bit about your background, finance, and how you made your way into the healthcare, health tech, social wellness area in ADHD, and maybe just a brief on like what Deepwrk is doing and what you're trying to address, and then we can go from there.
Sounds good. Thank you, Josh, for the warm introduction. Yeah, it's my background is probably a bit unconventional. So I spent 10 years in investment banking, initially with Barclays and then Morgan Stanley, in London, both of them covering industrial technology at MS. And I would say that probably every founder in the mental health space has their own journey to tell a story about. And mine started shortly after I joined Morgan Stanley in 2018. As you know, investment banking is could be intense, and I went through this period of 72 hours without sleeping, literally, and I ended up in a hospital, and effectively I spent 3 weeks there recovering. And that's where my journey started into mental health, and that's where I kind of came across this concept of peer-based support that Deepwrk, my company, is based on. And what we're doing with Deepwrk is we are enabling peer-based support for adults with ADHD so that they can work together, support each other, motivate each other. And we organize these focus sessions. And on top of that, we've layered gamification that our members love. And essentially what we're building is, you can think of it as Duolingo for ADHD management, where members get rewarded for getting things done, for learning how to better manage their ADHD.
That's super interesting, and when I hear it the second time, I know I've heard it before. It's still very like it rings true for a lot of things, because I think the most important thing for me and how I kind of link it to what Flockx is doing is the sense of having people around you, whether it's to get you through those things where maybe you're more vulnerable in, right? So like some people find it in getting out to a social activity. Some people, from an ADHD perspective, and that using the technology to enable these kind of things versus replace, right? Because I think there's a lot of talk around technology is trying to replace humans, and it doesn't solve for like mental health, and potentially causes more mental health issues.
Yeah.
And so like, being in the sort of the AI kind of space for ourselves, we see a lot of that at the moment. And when I take a look at like some of the metrics that you guys are seeing in terms of like peer-based support,
Mm-hmm.
you're seeing positive engagement on like increased output. And what is the kind of feedback from the people that join your platform, like in terms of like, is it just the ability to connect with other people that makes them feel like a sense of belonging, or like I know there's an accountability aspect to like
Yeah.
your daily sessions, but like
Yeah.
there's a sense, you talk about community as well, right? So it goes beyond just the hourly sessions, surely.
Yeah. Well, it's a loaded question, this one, but maybe starting from the beginning, I think what you said about vulnerability is key, because with mental health, there is this stigma, and it doesn't matter if you're based in the UK, in the US, or Eastern Europe. People just don't feel comfortable talking about it, especially at the workplace, within their family even, or friends. It's just such a taboo topic, and many people, and me including, didn't share or don't share, couldn't share, and struggle with this completely alone, in silence. Um, and I saw that at in the corporate space, people just you're considered weak for um, going through mental health struggles. Whereas when you think about it, 40% of people go through mental health condition or situation in one time of their life. So what I want to do is normalize it, and also what we want to do with Deepwrk is build that space where people can feel comfortable talking, and where they can feel supported. And and I think that goes to your question about the feedback. I think what we've created is a safe space, and that word safe space is key. People feel comfortable and feel that they're understood, and I think that's the key. That if you haven't gone through a mental health condition or experience, you just don't understand. Whereas people that have gone through it, whether that's depression, bipolar, or ADHD, whatever it is, we kind of start to understand each other. And so I think that's what makes us different. We've built that space where people feel comfortable, understood, connected, and finally they feel they're not alone.
So would you consider maybe even that these hourly sessions is, when you talk about the words you're using, safe, vulnerability, kind of like reflect what a third space is meant to be like, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like essentially like your sessions that your members, your have essentially, this is a safe space for them, and they come into these sessions, and so where they can be themselves. So it's like a third place, and it is virtual, right? They don't do them in person.
No, it's purely virtual. Yeah, you can consider that a third space because people spend on average more than 100 minutes a day on the platform. So that's nearly an hour or more than an hour and a half. And usually people work remotely, hybrid, sometimes in the office, and they use it to, I think, as you said, the safe space is one thing, but also to feel less lonely and to really make a difference in terms of their productivity. Because fundamentally, that's what Deepwrk is built on the premise that we're more productive when we work alongside each other, and that's what we're enabling with these focus sessions. But at the same time, to your point, we see a pull from our members that they need more than the focus space. They need support sessions where they can talk and connect. So I think this is the first step. The focus sessions are just the first step, and what we want to do is build a end-to-end ADHD management platform where people can get that daily peer support on one side, but also to get support from the community, um, education and learning and coaching on the other side. So yeah, it goes beyond just the focus sessions.
Yeah, I mean, I know. Okay, you go for it. Sorry, I'm hogging,
No,
hogging the mic.
I
there.
know. I'm like, because this is a subject that I really think is very important. I even lately I was listening to a video of another founder who was focused, for example, on the financial aspect of ADHD, entrepreneurs and everything. Because like ADHD, obviously, like I would love you to define it, for anyone who is not familiar. I don't know if there is anyone nowadays, but like, still just giving a perspective of, for example, it was a nice example they mentioned of, how ADHD really makes, like, in a sense, like people struggle with their finances as well. And it is important to allocate, for example, say, instead of putting money to a savings account, they were saying like it's good to have them, in a sense, like itemized, as in this certain amount of money is going, like, this is my buying a car pocket where I'm going to put these money and save. So it's like more goal and objective oriented rather than a vague saving, because then it's easy, like that person's going to move things around and not actually be able to save or manage their finances. And I feel like I see a little similarity maybe in the time aspect as well, just like the money side. So I was just curious to hear from you, like, what are some of the, key takeaways for people with ADHD that you have come across, or maybe enforce those theories throughout the process of with Deepwrk, whether it is career-wise or time aspects, or in the social perspective as well.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. And kind of spending is one of the key symptoms or aspects of ADHD, where you have impulsivity, and so it can lead to excess spending, and that's why this probably works well. Now, ADHD is quite a comprehensive condition with various symptoms, but and also it depends on which type of ADHD we're talking about. There are 3 different types. One is more hyperactive, another one is inattentive, and there is a combined, which is the most common case. But basically, in what we've seen and what we're solving for is related to inability to initiate tasks. And oftentimes with ADHD, your brain just cannot start the task, and then once you start it, you can go into that hyper focus space where you can actually spend the next 3 hours doing that task, but the initiation is tough. For other people, it's the staying on task. Those that are more hyperactive would need support staying on task. And then the third aspect that we are solving for is this time related symptom, which is when you have ADHD, sometimes you can lose track of time, either when you're in hyperfocus or just time perception works differently. And so what we do with these focus sessions is we give a framework, a time-bound framework, where people can do their tasks, and we also help with the initiation of each of these tasks, because in the beginning of each session, one of our members would share what they want to get done, and this helps with this feeling of overwhelm in the beginning, and it breaks down the task, makes it easier to start. It chunks down the different tasks and reduces that level of anxiety, of overwhelm. So yeah, these are some things that come to mind. The other maybe important aspect is, and why gamification is so key for us, is well, there are many hypotheses of what's causing ADHD. There is no proven aspect of where it comes from. But one hypothesis is that dopamine synthesis or absorption in the ADHD brain that is not comparable to the neurotypical brain, and so people with ADHD need more dopamine, and that's why you would see, for example, social media overly excessive social media consumption, kind of junk food consumption, sometimes alcohol and drug abuse, so that that level of dopamine can be increased. And what we're doing is using user experience in the platform to build in gamification that leads to positive behavioral change, leveraging that dopamine impact for our members. And so I would say, if there is one tip in terms of better managing ADHD is to try to gamify the tasks. A lot of our members do that, on a pen and paper in a very basic way, or you can join a platform like Deepwrk and gamify that experience of completing tasks.
I love that.
Yeah, I think, and also, like, just talking about in the mental health side, I know that I've done some reading and research into the idea of procrastination.
Yeah.
And what I didn't realize, that procrastination is not actually, from what I understand, is it's not actually a habit. It's actually driven by anxiety.
Exactly.
It's an endless cycle of, like, you procrastinate, you delay your task, you get anxious because you're stressed, and then it goes. But the reason why you're procrastinating because you can't, like you said, initiate the initial task. Like,
yeah.
It's a procrastination is not a bad habit. It's just the inability to activate a task, initiate the task.
Exactly. That's it. It's the anxiety and the fear of what this task brings. The feeling of, for example, if you go for a run, you don't put your shoes on because you fear the pain of running, right? And then once you get on the road, it's actually okay most of the times. I think it's very similar, and that's what we try to encourage our members to start with something small, and even if it's 2 minutes of that thing, just to start, and that, first of all, breaking it down, chunking it down, helps reduce the anxiety and overwhelm. And then once you start, you get into the flow, and it just starts going. That's what we've seen quite often, actually.
I mean, I have days where I feel like I'm more in the flow of my tasks than others, right? It just sometimes works, and it definitely, the dopamine you get from a very good flow of work day is very different to like a not so flow work day. So it to me it makes sense, and I think also the idea of working from home, remote working, virtual working, is very, very different, right? It's to the in the office where you have that peer support by default, right? Whether you talk to them or not, like they're there, right? And you interacting with them either around the coffee table or the cafeteria, or you're sitting around a desk of four, which I know I've tried to replicate a couple of times in my previous job in here, where I'll just jump on a call with someone and say, hey, listen, I've got a couple of things that I need to do, but it's nice to know that you're on the other end of the call. And like, if I have questions, I can just ask, but let's just do our own thing, but be the same. It's like a virtual office.
Yeah.
And I have seen a productivity change and I don't have a metric for a happiness change, but it made me feel better about my work, having some of those sessions as opposed to working alone in my home with no interaction around the tasks that I'm doing.
Yeah, well, that's spot on, and that's what we're doing, kind of bringing that feeling of support, but subtracting the commute and the distraction that you get in the office. And when you think about it, there is a scientific reason why we operate better when we work alongside each other. We're social animals. We kind of developed in tribes, and that need to perform, and when you're observed to kind of belong to a tribe and try to do your best when you're part of that group, is just very deeply embedded in us. And you can see it in, I don't know, maybe it's an ADHD thing, or I don't know if it's the case for you, but for example, when you do group exercise classes, they work much better for me than when I go alone. And I've always performed better in terms of studying or learning in the library or coffee shop, or as I said, the office. And so this is kind of the social facilitation nature of what we do. And I mean, there is more and more data coming out supporting why this works so well for ADHD. But it can double the probability of completing a task when you're working alongside somebody else, and when you have that commitment.
Yeah, and I think whilst our implementation of Flockx is slightly different, some of the thesis or the ethos is similar. By being part of a flock, or being part of a community, or just being in a space where others that are like-minded to you, it has an impact to your social health, your social flourishing, your ability to like that human connection, that social connection. It does have an impact, and I mean, there's a lot of research on that, and I think that there's always that debate of the pros and cons of virtual versus in person, and I think they need to be on a case-by-case basis. And I think in your case, the virtual makes sense, right? It really it achieves the objective of what you're trying to achieve. We're obviously we're a little more focused on like the in-person kind of thing, to because where I'm going with this is more like, we're also talking about the epidemic of loneliness, and you mentioned loneliness. So do you have any feedback or like metrics that you've been looking at to show that your platform is helping solve for elements of loneliness? Because what Erk and I were discussing before the call was, is there a correlation between ADHD and loneliness, right?
Yeah.
And I know that the goal of your platform is not to solve for loneliness, right? It's a different objective, but it might be a byproduct of something that you're doing.
Well, that's it. It's the byproduct, and we have qualitative data in terms of the feedback from our members, and we have hundreds of feedback points that that people are finding a community, safe space, and as I was saying earlier, a place to connect, and that addresses the loneliness piece. And I would say maybe it's not a correlation with ADHD, but I would say correlation with mental health. And when you're neurodivergent, by definition, you're going through the experience most likely alone, because nobody understands you unless they've gone through something like this. Oftentimes, your family and friends don't understand you. So, kind of the loneliness element is embedded in the menu there. I'm not saying that's the case for everyone, and many people have the support and understanding of their close ones, but it happened. But it's way too common in any case.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that I similar to you with group classes, I do thrive in social environments where I feel safe. I do. It's just like, obviously I'm very happy with my family, I'm at home, but like, in terms of like looking at that, I've got a work balance, I've got a family life balance, you've got your friendship circles, your sense of belonging in those communities that I'm a part of, whether that's friendship groups or interest groups. There is for me at least, during COVID, I was looking for those kind of things to like interact with people, and we tried to fulfill those with, we had a quiz night every Sunday with the family, like someone had to build a quiz and all that kind of things. But it doesn't substitute, for these kind of in-person pieces. And even just the networking events that like where I met you, like where those things go through, I think the power of the human connection is really, really cool.
And to be honest, we don't need to replace one with the other. I feel that people are looking for a menu of options that work, and you can supplement the virtual space with a physical third space. And I think I see that in a lot of our members. They're not purely remote. A lot of them are hybrid. Some days they're in the office. And the funny thing is sometimes they use Deepwrk from the office, but I don't think it's a choice between one or the other. It's a combination that can give you that social environment and sense of connection. And as you were saying, this loneliness epidemic is becoming probably one of the most dangerous aspect of the lifestyle we live. And you see it much more in the UK and the US than you see it in south of Europe, but there is a massive correlation with lifespan, right? And what we are building is I see helping with building that sense of connection, understanding, and based on the feedback from our members, I think we're making a difference in a virtual way. And I think that there could be so much more done in a physical way, and I think what you're doing is amazing.
And I think I'm super biased when it comes to like remote work. I think remote work is a great opportunity for people, because going to the office has kind of mandated a lot of people before, and still a lot of people working remotely. It pushes you to have to hang out with your coworkers, which you might not necessarily be like-minded, if that makes sense, or you might be a different stage in life. There is, and you kind of have to have conversations and have to be under one roof with people that you might not necessarily hang out outside of it. And with remote work, what it gives you an opportunity is, whether it is virtual or in person through co-working spaces and everything, you can actually hang out with people who are same mindset, same goals, they have similar things with you. So you choose who your, I guess not co-workers, but like in a sense, like people that you work right next to each other are. Well, I think whether it is in the work aspect, which with your platform with Deepwrk, or it is the social aspect, especially with Flockx and going in person. I think these are great opportunities that are coming up, especially with the challenges of post-pandemic. I think that are great opportunities. And what I was curious about is I came prepared for this episode. I talked to a couple of people who are either knowledgeable or have had ADHD symptoms, or have been self-diagnosed, or actually diagnosed, and everything. And so looking at a few examples, what I saw is one of the challenges there is the aspect of taking that step, especially socially. I'm not talking about just about the tasks, but it might kind of be similar. But what do you see in your members and people in general with ADHD on wanting to socialize? Because to my understanding, based on looking at it, the social battery drains faster for ADHDers. It's they lose focus if it's not interesting conversation, or if it's not intriguing to them. So how do these people keep their attention span in there? And how do they take that step into socializing? I'm going to call the Deepwrk aspect of socializing as well, or going out in Flockx aspect of going out there and socializing with people, taking that step.
Yeah. Well, in terms of the way the platform is built, we only discuss what people are working on in the beginning of each hour and at the end of each hour. Then the rest is spent really in deep and focused work. Or many people actually do all kinds of activities on the platform, like their morning routine, or dishes or laundry and so on. But my point is kind of the social element is very light. It's kind of just gives you a glimpse and doesn't overwhelm you. And the other thing is, you might have seen this, but there is a big overlap between ADHD and autism, and the comorbidity is about 70-80% of people with autism have ADHD. And so we have members with autism who prefer to be just on chat instead of being on video, and we try to enable that, and that helps reduce any cognitive load and fatigue as well. So that being said, I think the feedback we've received is that this small bits of communication, especially for somebody working from home or remotely, is incredibly helpful and not overwhelming at all. And in terms of the social aspect, I mean, we do have a community where people spend time together, but it's mostly text-based.
And then, Valerie, out of interest, the hour sessions they do, is it with the same people every day, or does that alternate?
You mean the
my daily session? If I count my daily session, will I see you every single day, or is it randomized?
It's different people, yeah. We have 5 hosts at the moment, and at the moment we do these sessions facilitated by a host. But the plan going forward is as the community grows, for people to connect bilaterally in small groups based on the activity they're doing, or preferences in terms of work style, and building that social element behind it, so that you have people that you feel comfortable working with as well.
Yeah, because to Erkan's point, where I see potentially your platform evolving, and what you said in the beginning was because of that, from what we've learned from loneliness, and the idea that just for any any individual, the idea of finding an item or a thing to go out to, it's nice to have someone to go with you, right? Either it's your partner, your sibling, your parent, whatever it is. And I can see that if on your platform, if individuals form some sort of connection, they're more likely to go out to an event with someone they've met via Deepwrk.
That's true. Yeah.
As a friend, not as a romantic relationship, because that's the same thing of the safe space, right?
Yeah.
This person knows who I am. I don't have to be different in front of this person. They accept me for who I am. So I'd rather have that person come with me to a movie, or to a restaurant, or a social hour, as opposed to someone else. So that idea of a buddy, or someone just to give you that confidence boost.
Yeah, there is definitely this physical world element that we can introduce at some point, as long as we have enough people in key cities. Yeah, and you can see live deep work sessions where people see each other in person. And yeah, there is definitely value in this. Also organizing events for the community in person, webinars and ADHD related events, whatever they are, also makes sense to have in person. Yeah. And as you said, yes, there is the social element where you can connect with somebody on Deepwrk and you can take that offline. And that could be quite interesting. We are definitely thinking about those social connectivity and networking elements within the platform.
Yeah, I think, even just today I read another article, because what I think is very interesting with what you're doing is that I think that the time-based thing is very interesting. Because as we know, with whatever it is, whether it's a diet or a fitness regime or whatever it is, keep it going for like weeks on end, 24 hours a day is quite tough, right? It's an extreme commitment. And you see people like, starting a diet and ending a diet, or starting to run and stopping to run.
Yeah.
Starting a new hobby. But the time-based thing, from what you're doing, an hour a day, then the extra, an extra hour doing something else, but is like, it's a little chunk of my day that I can put aside to do it, right? And even today, I was reading another article. We were in, when I was in South by Southwest, there was a panel with, I think we spoke to you about it before, was around with Ron Ivy, professor from Harvard, who's talking about loneliness, and then this other app called Mino, which is talking about like a reflective coaching using AI. But in this article, they talk about this new club that's starting in Amsterdam. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's called the Offline Club. And have you heard about it?
No, but I can imagine what it is about.
Basically, when you go to one of their events, you have to drop your cell phone or phone at the entrance.
Yeah.
And it's basically people going to either read, do their work, knit, engage, completely outside of the digital space. To your point, it's not deep work, it's deep connecting, or it's deep something else. It's deep individual, it's deep self-reflections, but they're going to that place knowing for that hour, that purpose of that is to be offline, and to either connect with your work, connect with your hobby, or connect with others. So that I think the time is important, because you can't expect someone to do this 24 hours a day. But there's an element of like, just do it in, like you said, start small chunks, right? But I think
I like the concept. It's an interesting idea, and what is key is, in terms of the time chunks, it's blocking that time for that specific thing, and you can block time for focused work, but also you can block time for a break, and that's the other thing we discovered on the platform is our users learn how to find time and schedule breaks, and instead of going away and then disappearing into the oblivion of Instagram or TikTok, they come back after 25 minutes, which is half of the session, and they say, look, I was just brought back at the half point. And so scheduling time for a break is important, as is for deep focused work. And then this, I can almost see the Deepwrk club somewhere in London, right?
Yeah. I think I completely agree, and I think that I think we've all experienced, being lost in some form of digital abyss, some stage of it, us exploring, and I think, again, like, the concern with the digital side becoming like the opposite of like, saying that social media is like, but it's not really social, right? And it's like, well, how do we use technology to enable the people, and like, you're helping your technology platform to enable ADHD. We're trying to use a platform to enable individuals to find a sense of belonging and connect with their community no matter where they are.
Yeah, exactly. And instead of using these very powerful behavioral mechanisms to hook people into something that's not good for them, flipping it around and actually using it for good, and to make a positive difference. That's what we're trying to do. Whereas I think we've seen way too much of these mechanisms, in terms of almost an online roulette with some platforms that just are not used for the benefit of the user, right?
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, more on your personal side for yourself, I mean, has social media impacted your life at all? Like, how do you manage your time with your screen time with social media, and are you very like regimed about it? Are you active? Are you like, how do you?
Well, I think I'm an absolutist, which means I deleted my Facebook account many years ago. And then the problem was I had to use Instagram for business. So, so that, unfortunately, there is no escape from that much. And yeah, I noticed myself spending more time on social media, especially now with short form video. And that's what I'm saying. It's just designed to hijack your dopamine system. These 30-second short form videos. That's the way they work. I mean, it's like a constant dopamine hit that overwhelms your brain, and then you feel depleted after that because you go through this peak and down cycle. Anyway, what I'm saying is, yes, it kind of sucked me in as well, and now I'm trying to reduce my social media exposure. And the last thing I'm doing, I'm using a couple of applications. One of them is basically giving you 5 seconds to breathe before you open the app, so you can actually close. It's kind of, it increases friction strategically, basically. And then the second one is just blocking apps altogether, and you cannot use them more than a certain amount of time. And then the third thing is I'm using a grayscale screen, and
Oh, really?
that makes the, I don't know if I can show it, but
I've seen a few people do that. That's what's very interesting. Yeah.
Does it remove color completely? Oh, wow.
It does, yeah. Yeah, and so that helps a lot because it makes it less interesting, to be honest. So yeah, that's my methodology. But yeah, I cannot say that I'm immune to social media.
No, I think for me, there's some great tips. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try one of the. I mean, I I use different. I use dark mode on my phone because I'm sensitive to light. But like I've seen other applications. I've seen my friends use the blocking of the app certain time per day. I've seen I've had family members use that for studying as well.
Yeah.
So like their phone gets blocked for like an hour. They put a timer on their phone, and then it blocks their phone whilst they can concentrate on their studies. Similar, I suppose, similar to what like an hour focus time, right? Yeah, it's super super interesting on that.
Yeah, the funny thing is we kind of see TikTok and the likes as our anti-heroes in our story. And the funny thing is our members spend more time on Deepwrk than they do on TikTok, which is, I hope, the counterbalance.
Yeah, fair enough. And I suppose, is there a time limit on how much they can spend in the platform, on your platform? Is it?
No, there isn't a time limit. It depends really. On average, they spend more than 100 minutes a day on the platform. I think I mentioned that. And some users do more. They can do 5, 6, 7 sessions in a day. So basically, they spend the whole day with us. So it really depends. And yeah, I think that the interesting thing is that it also helps with social media use, because people are not afraid to say, okay, I got distracted by social media, but doing it once, more than once, you feel almost the social pressure to just, you just don't feel comfortable looking at social media when you're in one of the focus sessions. It just doesn't feel right.
Fair enough. And then just to take it out of the business aspect for a little bit, is what are the top communities that you're involved in outside of your work, and how do you, obviously I'm sure you travel, how do you connect with those communities, and how do you stay active in your sort of Flockx, your communities?
Well, I as I said, I attend a lot of group exercise sessions. So that's definitely one for me. Although you don't really talk to people there, but at least still you feel part of a tribe, right? And also a bunch of founder communities. It's a lonely experience being a founder. So I'm a member of a bunch of communities in London. Also, I found that talking to other founders is incredibly insightful, first of all, but also you can share the pain and the struggle, because people have gone through similar experience. So that's mostly it. I guess the third piece is, family is incredibly important, and maybe actually should say that or put that first, because I'm back home now with my own family, and I would say that kind of Southeast Europe family is incredibly important. Yeah.
That's amazing. Erkin, I don't know if you had any sort of the rapid fire ones that you wanted to go through
Yeah.
as part of our tradition.
I mean, this whole topic is very particular. So like a lot of rapid questions are not necessarily directly relevant, but what I would love to hear from you, like, especially put me into this, like mentioning the family and the connections there.
Mhm.
What I wanted to ask is, could you share with us like what has been, or maybe you've seen in your members or in your own perspective, like just socially speaking, like what are some struggles that you've seen lately, especially after COVID, especially like I think that's impacted a lot of people in their social aspect of being able to connect. Like, so you go out there because you're also a founder. It's by your nature you have to go out and be outgoing and talk to people and shake hands and rub elbows, you name it. But for people who are a bit more introverted just in general, and they're like for example in the marketing perspective, like I cannot set limits into the apps because that's my job, you know what I mean? Like it's impossible for me to set limits on it. But like going into the social aspect, like I would love to hear like any observations of yours, whether it is from your own life perspective or from your members. Like how are they managing their social aspect of like getting part of a flock or getting part of a community, making friends, in other words, especially for people who don't live close to a family like you do in London. Love to hear, or any instances, any examples would be awesome to hear.
I think it's interesting, or I don't know if you've seen the same thing, but I feel that after COVID, people are struggling to make these relationships the way we used to before. I don't know what it is. I don't think anyone is afraid of COVID anymore, but it's maybe we've lost, or some of us have lost the social mojo, or I don't know. Even myself, I feel like after COVID, you kind of pull back for a year, and getting back into the groove is not that easy. Kind of some of the groups that I had in the past, they're not there because people just moved on or changed countries or had family, and just it's interesting that I feel that there is some struggle there post COVID for people to make meaningful connections, and honestly, it could be that London is just a very dynamic city, and maybe it's a London thing. I don't know. I don't know if you see the same thing. Maybe turning the question to you, do you see such a trend?
Yeah, I mean personally, I agree with you. Like, I did lose some of my social mojo to a certain degree of like, also like with my family, we were a little bit more central. We moved a little bit further out, not out of London, but like we're not in near the center. But I agree. Like, I've shifted more to spending a lot of time with fewer people as opposed to a little bit of time with lots of people.
Correct.
And I'm focusing on building the deeper connections again, because I value the vulnerability and safe space higher than I do some of the other things. To your point of, I get a lot more of a dopamine hit spending time with someone who I feel I can be vulnerable with and feel safe with than I do from a shallow connection where it's just like not, it doesn't feed my soul, doesn't feed me. So I choose to, therefore I probably do go to friends' houses more than I do go to, nightclubs or bars, because I value those personal interactions a little bit more.
Maybe just the threshold has gone up for socializing, I feel. which doesn't mean you need to meet more interesting people or anything like that, but maybe just to get you out of the house, there needs to be more of a pool, basically.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I would agree with that one.
And sorry, I don't mean you, I mean generally.
No. I mean,
he just said Josh does not.
No. I think you're right. I think if I had to put myself in those shoes, there are definitely things that I'd get out the house for more than others. And you're right, family is extremely important to me. And as you want to try and do family activities, and also as you go through different stages of your life, so your friendship groups change, and your it goes through ups, waves, just like a life. So
but at the same time, I feel like people are getting more and more disconnected. And I talked to some people from the founder community who said that, okay, but is the world moving into the direction of more in-person communication? I will be interested to see, what do you see? I feel like in the US and Europe, people are pulling back and are actually more in the digital space than they are in the physical space.
I mean, from what I think you're right in terms of, I think people are spending more time digitally, but I think it might be at a turning point of people trying to understand, like, well, what is the actual impact to them? Like, I think people are starting to think about it more. I think there's attention on loneliness in general. I'm seeing a lot of it on LinkedIn. It's becoming more out there, and I think I think maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know. But value the in-person connection. I think people are trying to get out to things a little bit more. But I still believe that digital is still the majority.
And maybe what happened is the COVID facilitated digitalization of everything, and maybe it facilitated the digitalization of us in reality, right? And that need to have that physical presence is becoming more and more important and more critical.
Yeah, and
also, it just, like, I agree with you on the aspect of the threshold has gone up. Like, for example, for me, like, if somebody wants to meet at the first one, it's like I'd rather just have a virtual call first. Kind of in my brain, subconscious is like, I want to see if it's worth for me to hop in the car or go out there, because like it takes time between traffic and everything to go meet someone. It's like you get that question, like, is it worth the whole time invested, kind of the ROI, like, and then once you talk to them virtually, you're like, oh, okay, it's a nice chat. For example, Valerie, like, I would love to meet you in person, like that, it's like, okay, I see that we would have a good chat, in person as well. So I feel like it has put a little bit of barrier there, where you're like, I want to see you virtually, and if everything sounds good, then let's meet in person.
Yeah,
I think there is also a generational thing. I think that I think if you look at sort of the teens that are growing up now, people between 13 and 20, I think they had the impact of COVID, grew up in a much more digital era than some of us grew up in, and maybe they do feel more comfortable in a digital environment than in a physical environment, face-to-face, where I'm the opposite. I feel more comfortable in the face-to-face than in the digital. So I think it really depends on the persona or the individual you're talking to and what makes sense for them. And I have seen a lot of organizations, a lot of initiatives really focusing in on trying to get individuals between the ages of like 12 and 17 out to physical activities and physical events, because of that. And I think the Foundation for Social Connection in Washington was doing something similar. But anyway, there's still lots to talk about. Valerie, we really appreciate your time. Hope to see you again. Let me know when you're back in London. I'd love to connect through one of the founder networks or communities. Let's catch up. And please keep us updated on what you're doing, and anything else we can do to keep in touch.
And lastly, where can people find you, Valerie? Any social, any aspect you want to share at the end, so that people can follow your journey with Deepwrk, or they could join the community. So if you could just share that at the end, it'd be awesome.
Yeah, you can check out deepwrk.io is the website, or find me on LinkedIn, Valeri Gervaziev. I'm sure you guys have the name there in the note description. And yeah, reach out.
Right. Thanks so much, Valerie.
All right. Thank you, guys. This was super interesting.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Thanks, Erkan.
Thanks. Cheers.
All right. I'll catch you later. Bye.